My name is Naomi. I am 32 years old, and I've been married to my husband, James, for 4 years. Last month, we were all gathered at my in-laws' home for my father-in-law's 60th birthday dinner when, right in the middle of the celebration, my sister-in-law stood up and told everyone I had been stealing money from the family business. She held up a folder, slid printed documents across the table, and looked directly at my husband with tears in her eyes. Within seconds, every face in that room turned toward me. My mother-in-law pressed her hand to her chest. My father-in-law slowly set down his fork. James went completely still beside me. But I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I simply reached for my glass of water, took one slow sip, and said, "Before anyone says anything else, I think we should open my laptop." That one sentence changed the entire evening. But before I get to that part, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Heartstring Stories, and let me know in the comments what country you're watching from. Now, let me tell you about the night that finally showed my husband's family exactly who I am and exactly who his sister had been all along. James's family had owned a small but steady event planning company for nearly 20 years. His parents started it together, built it from nothing, and when they stepped back a few years ago, they passed the day-to-day operations to their two oldest children, James and his sister Vanessa. James handled the client relationships and project management. Vanessa handled the finances. It had always been that way, even before I came into the picture. I met James at a work conference 6 years ago. We were seated at the same round table during a panel discussion, and by the end of the afternoon, we had exchanged numbers. 8 months later, we were engaged. A year after that, we were married. From the very beginning, Vanessa made it clear that she had opinions about me. She never said anything outright. That was the thing about Vanessa. She was careful. She was the kind of person who always smiled while she was doing it. When James first brought me to meet the family, she shook my hand warmly, told me it was wonderful to finally meet me, and then spent the rest of the evening asking James very pointed questions about his work, his finance, and his long-term plans, all while I was sitting right there. As if I were a piece of furniture that had suddenly appeared in the room and no one had decided yet whether to keep it. Over the next 2 years, the comments became a pattern. "Naomi, I keep forgetting what exactly is it that you do again?" she asked once at Christmas dinner, even though she had asked the same question the year before, and James had told her twice since then. "You're so lucky James is patient with you," she said once, when I'd made a small mistake scheduling a family event. She said it quietly, almost warmly, as if she were paying me a compliment. "We just want to make sure James is protected," she told her mother once, not realizing I was standing just on the other side of the kitchen doorway. "He's always trusted people too easily." I never responded to any of it. James knew his sister had her edges, and I didn't want to be the reason their relationship suffered. So I smiled. I stayed polite. I showed up to every family dinner, every holiday, every birthday with something homemade and a genuine effort to belong. But about 3 months before my father-in-law's birthday dinner, something shifted. I had started helping part-time with the business, nothing formal, just covering some administrative tasks while James was overwhelmed with a large contract. Vanessa hadn't been happy about it. She made that clear in small ways. Files I needed were suddenly hard to locate. Emails I was CC'd on would be forwarded to clients without me. Once, a vendor called me confused because the invoice I had sent had apparently been updated after I submitted it, with a note at the bottom saying all future communications should go directly to Vanessa. I noticed, but I said nothing. Then, about 6 weeks before the birthday dinner, I was organizing some files on the shared company drive, and I came across something that stopped me cold. It was a series of payment records. On the surface, they looked routine vendor payments, contractor invoices, standard operating costs. But the amounts were slightly off, not dramatically. Just enough that if you weren't paying close attention, you'd never catch it. A few hundred here, a few thousand there. The kind of discrepancies that could easily be explained away as rounding errors or updated rates. Except they were all routed to the same external account, an account I had never seen before in any of the company's official documents. I didn't say anything to James immediately. I wasn't sure what I was looking at yet. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to my personal email. Then I reached out quietly to a friend of mine, a woman I had gone to college with who now worked in financial compliance, and I asked her to take a look. She got back to me within a week. What she found was not small. Over a period of approximately 18 months, more than $90,000 had been transferred out of the company account in small, irregular increments. The external account they were routed to had been opened in the name of a shell vendor, a company with no website, no address, and no registered business activity. But the email address attached to that account had been used to log into the company system from a device registered to one person, Vanessa. I sat with that information for 2 weeks. I didn't sleep well. I kept running through every possible explanation, every innocent reason it might look the way it looked. But there wasn't one. I had my friend write up a formal summary of her findings. I saved every document, every screenshot, every log. I put it all in a folder on my laptop and I waited. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for, exactly. I think I was hoping it would never come to this. It came to this. My father-in-law's 60th birthday dinner was on a Saturday evening. My in-laws' house was full aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends, people who had known James and Vanessa since they were children. The table in the dining room had been extended with a second folding table to fit everyone. There were flowers and candles and a banner strung above the doorway that said 60 and fabulous in gold letters. My mother-in-law had spent 2 days cooking. It was supposed to be a wonderful evening. I had come prepared anyway, not because I planned to do anything that night, but because somewhere in the back of my mind, a quiet instinct told me to bring my laptop. I had tucked it into the large bag I carry everywhere and said nothing about it to James. Dinner was warm and loud and full of laughter for the first hour. My father-in-law told the same 3 stories he always told about starting the business, and everyone laughed in the right places because they loved him. James sat beside me, with his hand resting easy on the back of my chair. For a little while, I let myself relax. But I noticed Vanessa watching me. Not constantly, not obviously. But every now and then I would catch it, that particular stillness in her expression, the way her eyes would flick over to me, and then away again, too quickly. She was sitting across the table and 2 seats down, and she had barely spoken to me all evening. When I'd greeted her at the door, she had given me a hug that lasted exactly 1 second and said it was great. I could make it, in the same tone people use to say they hope it rains. Something felt wrong. I couldn't name it yet, but it sat in my stomach like a stone all through dinner. Dessert came out around 8 o'clock. My mother-in-law carried out a cake with 60 candles, and everyone crowded around the table to sing. My father-in-law laughed and shook his head and said he was going to need help blowing them all out. His youngest grandchild, a 4-year-old named B, immediately volunteered. The room erupted. James was grinning beside me, and for just a moment, everything felt exactly as it should. Then Vanessa stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She simply stood, and the way she did it slowly, deliberately, with a thick manila folder already in her hand, made the room quiet on its own. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, "but I've been sitting on something for weeks, and I don't think I can stay quiet anymore, not in front of everyone who loves this family." My father-in-law looked at her with gentle confusion. James straightened in his seat. Vanessa looked directly at me. "I found something in the company accounts," she said, her voice measured and sad, like someone delivering bad news they had rehearsed. "Money has been going missing. I've been trying to figure it out for months, and I finally traced it." She paused. "It leads back to Naomi." The room went very still. I felt James turn toward me. I felt my mother-in-law's eyes find my face. Across the table, an uncle I had only met a handful of times leaned forward slightly, as if he hadn't heard correctly. Vanessa opened the folder. She began sliding printed pages down the table: transaction records, account summaries, highlighted figures. She had clearly prepared this. She had spent time on it. The pages were clean, organized, and labeled in a way that made them look authoritative. "These are transfers that don't match any approved vendor," she said. I cross-referenced every one of them. They all trace back to an account that Naomi had access to when she was helping with the books earlier this year. She pressed her lips together, as if this pained her greatly. I didn't want to believe it either. But the numbers don't lie. Someone at the far end of the table murmured, something I couldn't hear. My mother-in-law had gone pale. My father-in-law was looking at the pages now, frowning. James placed his hand on my arm. His voice was low and careful. Naomi. Everyone was looking at me, waiting for me to fall apart, to deny it, to get defensive, to start crying. That was what Vanessa had staged this for. That was the reaction she had planned around. I took a slow, quiet breath. Then I reached down beside my chair, pulled my laptop bag onto my lap, and unzipped it. Vanessa blinked. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Getting my laptop," I said simply. "This isn't the time for." "I think it's exactly the time," I said. I set the laptop on the table in front of me and opened it. "You've shown everyone documents. I have some documents too. I think my father-in-law deserves to see both sides before anyone draws any conclusions. It's his birthday. He should have the full picture." There was a brief silence. My father-in-law looked between Vanessa and me, then nodded slowly. "Let her speak," he said quietly. Vanessa laughed once, a short, humorless sound. "She's deflecting," maybe James's uncle said from the end of the table. "But let her show what she has." Vanessa's jaw tightened. I took my time. I pulled up the folder on my desktop and turned the laptop so it was angled toward the center of the table where more people could see. It wasn't ideal. The screen wasn't large enough for everyone, but I wasn't ready to go further than that yet. I wanted to read the room first. "Vanessa is right that money has been leaving the company account," I said. My voice was steady. I had practiced this kind of calm the way some people practice running slowly, daily, until it became something my body knew how to do on its own. "She's been watching it for months." "So, have I." "You've been watching it?" Vanessa said. "Since about 6 weeks before tonight," I replied. I clicked open the first document, the payment records I had originally found on the shared drive, the ones with the slight discrepancies. "These are the same transfers you're referring to. I found them while I was doing administrative work in March. I noticed the amounts didn't match the vendor records on file." "That's because you were the one making them," Vanessa said flatly. "I know that's what you're saying," I replied. "But let me finish." Something about my tone made her pause. It wasn't sharp or aggressive. It was just completely, absolutely level. And I think that rattled her, because she had expected a fight and she wasn't getting one. I opened the second document, the external account information my compliance friend had traced. "The transfers went to an account that doesn't belong to any real vendor," I said. I turned the laptop a little further. James leaned in to read. "The company name is listed as Crestview Administrative Services. There is no website. There is no registered address. There is no record of this company doing any actual work for us." My mother-in-law was very quiet now. "That proves it," Vanessa said quickly. "You created a shell account." "I'm not finished," I said. She stopped. The table was completely silent. Even the children at the far end, who had been restless a moment ago, had gone still in the way children do when they sense something serious is happening. I clicked to the next file. "My compliance friend traced the email associated with that account," I said calmly. "The email address was used to log into our company system 17 times over the past 18 months. Every login was made from the same device." I paused, just for a moment. Not for drama. Because I genuinely wanted my father-in-law to be looking at the screen when I said the next part. "That device is registered to Vanessa." The silence that followed was different from the ones before it. It was heavier. It had weight to it. My father-in-law slowly lowered the printed pages Vanessa had given him. James had gone completely still beside me. Across the table, Vanessa had not moved. Her face had not changed. But her hands, resting on the table in front of her, had tightened into fists. "That's not possible," she said. Her voice was quieter now. "The report is from a licensed financial compliance firm," I said. "My friend prepared it officially. It includes the login records, the device ID, the timestamps, and the account routing information." I turned the laptop a little further so the people nearest to her could see. "It's all documented." James's mother pressed both hands to her mouth. James looked at his sister. He didn't say her name. He didn't say anything. He just looked at her, and the expression on his face was something I had never seen before. Not anger, not confusion, but a quiet, terrible recognition, like something he had almost known but refused to let himself know, was finally becoming real. Vanessa's chin lifted slightly. Naomi set me up, she said. She's been working toward this since the day she married James. She wants control of this company. She wants Vanessa. My father-in-law's voice was soft, but absolute. It was the voice of a man who had spent 60 years choosing when to speak and when to stay quiet, and had learned the difference precisely. He looked at his daughter for a long moment. Is there more? I looked at my father-in-law. Yes, I said gently. I'm sorry, there is. I opened the final file. My compliance friend had gone deeper than I originally asked her to. What she had found in the last layer of the account trail was something I had gone back and forth about sharing tonight. I had almost decided to handle it privately, to give it to James and let him decide. But when Vanessa stood up with that folder and made her accusations in front of everyone James's parents loved and trusted, I understood why I had brought my laptop. Because some things need to be seen clearly, in the right light, by the right people. The final document showed a second external account. Smaller transfers, more irregular, spread across a longer time period. This one had been created almost 3 years ago, 2 years before I had any involvement with the company at all. The first account, Crestview, is the one I found in March, I said. But my compliance friend found a second one while she was tracing the records. This one goes back further. I kept my voice even. $93,000 total across both accounts. Over approximately 34 months. A sound moved through the room. Not words, just breath. The sound of a group of people registering something that couldn't be unregistered. My father-in-law looked at the screen for a long time. His hands were flat on the table. When he finally looked up at his daughter, there were no more questions in his expression. There was only grief. Vanessa, he said quietly. Why? Vanessa stood up so abruptly, her chair scraped backward. This is not, she started. Then, she stopped. She looked around the room. At her mother. At James. At her father. At the faces of people who had known her entire life. No one came to her defense. You were going to let her destroy my marriage, I said. I didn't say it with anger. I said it the same way I had said everything else, quietly, plainly, because the truth didn't need decoration. You took money from your own family's business for 3 years. And when I came close to finding it, you decided to get rid of me before I could. You don't know what it's been like, Vanessa said. Her voice cracked on the last word. It was the first real emotion she had shown all night. This company was supposed to be mine. Before James came back. Before you showed up. Everything changed. James spoke for the first time in several minutes. I didn't take anything from you, Vanessa. You took all of it, she said. Mom and Dad's attention. The clients. The credit. She shook her head. And then you brought her in, and suddenly she's everywhere, and I knew she was going to find out. I knew. So you tried to ruin her reputation, James said. His voice was very quiet. In front of our whole family. Vanessa said nothing. My mother-in-law stood up slowly. She walked around the table and stopped in front of her daughter. She didn't touch her. She just stood there for a moment, looking at her with an expression I don't have words for, the particular devastation of a parent who sees their child clearly, perhaps for the first time, and finds something they never prepared themselves to find. You need to go home tonight, she said. And tomorrow, you're going to sit down with your father and James, and you're going to account for every single dollar. Vanessa looked like she wanted to say something. Several things, maybe. But she didn't. She picked up her purse. She walked through the dining room and out through the front hallway, and the front door closed behind her with a sound that was somehow worse for being so ordinary. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then my father-in-law exhaled a long, slow breath, the kind that carries more than air with it. He looked at me across the table. His eyes were tired and sad, but there was something else in them too. I owe you an apology, he said. I shook my head. You believed what you saw. That's not your fault. I should have asked questions first, he said. Both of you should have. He looked at his wife, and she nodded slowly. James reached under the table and found my hand. He held it the way people hold things they almost lost. After a moment, B, the 4-year-old, who had been sitting very quietly in her high chair for the past 10 minutes with wide, uncertain eyes, lifted her hand and pointed at the cake. which was still sitting in the middle of the table with its 60 unlit candles. "Can we do the birthday now?" she asked. The question broke the silence like a window opening. A few people laughed the soft, relieved kind of laughter that doesn't mean anything is funny, just that people need somewhere to put what they're feeling. My father-in-law looked at his granddaughter and smiled. It reached his eyes in spite of everything. "Yes, sweetheart," he said. "Let's do the birthday now." Someone found a lighter. The candles were lit. The room gathered around the table again, more subdued than before, but together. When we sang, it was quieter than it would have been an hour earlier, but it was real in a way that forced cheerfulness never quite manages to be. My father-in-law blew out the candles. He needed 3 attempts, and B helped him with the last few. Everyone clapped. James kept hold of my hand through all of it. Later, after most of the guests had gone home, and my in-laws were quietly cleaning up the kitchen, James and I sat together on the back porch. The night was cool and still. I could hear my mother-in-law's voice through the kitchen window, low, steady, the sound of someone moving carefully through something difficult. James was quiet for a long time. He was looking out at the backyard, at the oak tree that had been there since before he was born, and I let him be quiet because some things need space before they can be said properly. Finally, he turned to me. "How long have you known?" he asked. "About 6 weeks," I said. "Why didn't you tell me?" I considered the question carefully, because it deserved a careful answer. Because I wasn't completely certain at first. And once I paused. "She's your sister, James. I wanted to be absolutely sure before I put that in front of you. And I wanted you to see it yourself. Not just hear it from me." He was quiet again. Then, I kept dismissing things. "When you'd mention something felt off with her. I kept telling myself you were being too sensitive." "I know. I'm sorry. I know that too." He leaned forward and pressed his forehead against my temple, the way he does when he doesn't have words but wants me to know anyway. I closed my eyes and let myself feel the relief of it, the quiet, solid relief of being believed, finally, completely, by the person who mattered most. "What happens now?" he asked. "Your parents are going to want a full accounting of the finances," I said. "There will probably be conversations with a lawyer. And depending on what those conversations turn up," I paused. "It may go further than that." He nodded slowly. He had already understood as much, I think. He was just letting himself catch up to it out loud. 3 weeks after that evening, with the help of a forensic accountant my in-laws brought in, the full scope of what Vanessa had done was documented and submitted to their attorney. The total confirmed amount was just over $106,000. The family made the decision together, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, and James, to file a formal report. It was not an easy decision. I was not in the room when they made it. It wasn't my place to be. But James told me afterward that his father had sat very still for a long time before he said what he said, and what he said was this: "We built something honest. If we protect dishonesty inside this family, we're saying honesty only matters when it's convenient." And I'm not willing to say that. Vanessa did not contest the findings. Her attorney negotiated a repayment plan. She resigned from all involvement with the company. The family contacts she had relied on for years grew distant in the way that people naturally do when the story of who someone is changes. I didn't feel triumphant about any of it. I want to be clear about that, because I think it matters. I didn't walk away from that evening feeling like I had won something. What I felt was more complicated and more quiet than that. I felt the specific, exhausting relief of someone who has been carrying something heavy for a long time and has finally been allowed to set it down. I also felt, for the first time since I had married into this family, like I was standing on solid ground, not because Vanessa was gone, but because the people who loved James, the people I had been trying to reach for 4 years, had finally looked at me clearly and seen what was actually there. My mother-in-law called me a few days later. It was a short call. She didn't have a great deal to say, and I didn't need her to. What she said was that she was sorry it had taken this long, and that she hoped I would be patient with all of them while they worked through it. I told her I was already patient. I had been for 4 years. A little more was no trouble at all. She laughed. It was the first time I had ever made her laugh, and it surprised both of us. "You're stronger than I gave you credit for," she said. "Most people are," I said. "When they have to be." We talked for another 10 minutes about nothing, in particular, a recipe she had been meaning to share with me. Something James had done as a child that she had been wanting to tell me for a while but had never quite found the right moment for. Small things. The kind of small things that are only possible once the larger things have been cleared away. After I hung up, I sat for a moment in the kitchen with the phone in my hand. Through the window, I could see James in the backyard, raking leaves into a pile that the wind kept slowly dismantling. He looked up and saw me watching him, and raised his hand in a small wave. I waved back. There are people who will tell you that the truth has a way of coming out on its own, that patience is always rewarded, that if you just wait long enough, everything will be revealed. I'm not sure I believe that entirely. I think the truth needs help, sometimes. I think it needs someone willing to pay attention, to keep records, to walk into a room with a laptop and stay calm enough to use it. But I also think that what my mother-in-law said was right, even if she didn't mean it in quite the way I'm taking it. Most people are stronger than anyone gives them credit for. Not because of anything dramatic, not because they've prepared some perfect revenge or engineered some perfect outcome, but because they decided, quietly and without announcement, to keep going, to show up, to carry the thing they were carrying without putting it down until the moment it actually mattered. That was all I did. And in the end, that was enough.